I think spring games are good for finding deficiencies, I guess would be a good way to put that. I think that glaring deficiencies in a spring game, I think, do triculate into the season. Now, just because you did something really well in a spring game, I don't think necessarily means that you're going to do it really well in the regular season, if that makes any sense. So, just because we say something was good or wasn't good in a spring game doesn't necessarily mean that's going to correlate on the field in the regular season. But I think that there are things from each of these games that we can take from it and kind of draw a line to some roster depth deficiencies, things like that. So let's kind of go through UGA first. First of all, I thought the offensive line looked really good, Mason. I thought the offensive line looked really good for Georgia, protecting the quarterback. I thought when Georgia did run the ball, which Georgia typically doesn't run the ball a ton in these spring games, I thought that they did well. I felt like I was pretty happy with the running backs. We talked about it earlier in the live show today that Andrew Paul has left. I thought he had a great spring game. So I guess he put some good plays on film and then out of there. But overall, I think that this is a really good offense. The wide receiver group, I think, mirrors the offensive line. I think they're deep and got some good players. I don't think that there's one first round talent at wide receiver necessarily, but I think there's probably multiple second, third, there's multiple draft picks beyond that. Maybe just not a top 30 guy. But what did you think about Carson Beck? I think that's one of the most, one of the things I've seen questioned the most online forums, things like that. I don't think it was a great showing. I think he wanted some of those throws back. I don't think it was all bad. I think Georgia's not going to throw the ball as much as they threw it in the spring game. I mean, as I said before, historically, Georgia throws the ball a lot in these spring games. I think the ball was thrown 90-something times between both sides. And I mean, let's be real. Come on. Georgia's not throwing the ball 45, 50 times a game. I think we all know that. But with all that being said, I didn't think Carson Beck had that great of a game. Kind of one of the downsides or downfalls of his game that I think I noticed last year was the deep ball. Not a great deep ball. Not super accurate. It seemed like a low hit rate on the long balls. And I'm not talking 20 yards down the field. Dude can throw a frozen freaking rope 20 yards down the field. The intermediate stuff is amazing. It seems like it's the downfield stuff. And not to say he hasn't connected on any, but he has. He had a great season last year, and I love Carson Beck as my quarterback. But if you had something to pick on with him, I think that would be it. What did you think about the offense? And then we'll get into the defense here in just a second.
Yeah, so Georgia, the biggest question for Georgia was going into the spring game, how does the defense look in general? How is the defensive line specifically going to look? And how are the receivers going to look? You mentioned at the beginning of the segment that, you really can't tell from a spring game, how good a team is. But if you go into it with the idea of what to expect from a team and what to be looking for a team, you can answer questions that you have about a program. And I think that's what we got, right? My questions were wide receiver and defensive line primarily, right? I didn't have questions on Carson Beck, and I'm not taking anything away from his game because of, an average performance, right? It wasn't a Heisman worthy performance or anything like that. But also, before I get off of Carson, I do want to say that, when you're playing in a spring game like they were, and you know that the ball is going to be thrown more times than not, as a defensive lineman, you're going to get your hands up. You're not trying to play sound gaps or anything like that when you know that they're probably not going to run the ball. So a lot of that was happening up front, and I think that maybe inflated the defensive line just a little bit. Michael Williams got a sack or got a an interception because of that. And it probably made Carson look a little bit worse. So take that for what you will. I mean, I think there were 3 or 4 batted balls, and Carson's
5, yeah, a lot.
Carson's 6'4". I mean, he's a pretty tall quarterback. So that shouldn't really happen. And I think that's probably why that happened so much. All right. So I do agree with you on the deep ball. I think he's missed some connections on the deep ball. That's one area, probably the only area where I'd like to see him improve. Everything else is pretty great. Even on the underthrow or even on the amazing catch by Dominic Lovett, that was an underthrown ball a little bit to where he had to go around the defender. And if you haven't watched that play, please go watch that play. It was a heck of a catch. Had that been in a live game, I mean, people would still be talking about it. It was pretty incredible. But yeah, so that's what I would like to see from Carson at the beginning of the season. Looking at the defensive line, I really liked what I saw out of Xavier McLeod, the South Carolina transfer at defensive tackle. 2 plays back to back. He, I believe it. So I know he had a sack. It may have been a tip ball and then a sack is what it was. In back-to-back plays, and just looked electric. Had good energy. Was kind of twitchy. So I was really impressed with him to see that. And of course, Mykel Williams. I mean, this I think he's about to have a really good year. I think when you look at what he did, not just in the spring game, but what he did last year at defensive end primarily, moving him to outside linebacker and getting him a little bit further away from the football and allowing him to really tee up some action towards the quarterback. I mean, I think it's just going to make him play better. He is an athletic freak and he's very long, and it was, to me, a little bit undersized to be playing defensive end. Moving him to outside linebacker, I think we're gonna see him be a little bit more athletic, and so I'm very happy with him moving to that position. Georgia is long overdue for having a serious pass rusher that they can tell to just go get the football. It's not quite how Kirby likes to play on defense, but I would love to see if this guy can tally up, even just 10 sacks, 10, 12 sacks this season. I think that would be very impressive. So I like what I saw out of him. CJ Allen is that guy. CJ Allen is the next Roquan Smith. And I think he's further ahead as a sophomore than where Roquan was, who really blossomed his junior year and became one of the best linebackers that we've seen recently. So, CJ Allen is really good. I was impressed with Jake Pope, who was stepping in, Alabama transfer, playing safety. I don't know that he's the starter necessarily, but I did like what I saw out of him. He seems like a more athletic version of Dan Jackson. He was a little bit quicker, a little bit more mobile, almost came up with a really nice interception at the end where he had to dive forward for it. That was pretty impressive to see. And then on the offensive side of the football, I mean, I can't say enough about Colby Young. This guy is going to be something very serious. Reminds me of Javon Wims for Georgia fans. A mix between Javon Wims and Lawrence Cager. I think that's kind of what I feel with him. Maybe not quite as technically sound as Wims was, but has the physical element that Lawrence Cager brought to the table from Miami, coincidentally. But I really like what I saw out of him, and I think Dominic Lovett is in year 2 going to really impress. Along with, we didn't see a whole lot from Dylan Bell, but I know that Dylan Bell is going to be that guy once again. I mean, contested catch radius is pretty incredible for his size. I mean, he's not a huge guy, but for the one-on-one 50-50 balls, the guy just rips it away and makes plays. Outside of that, I think I've named just about every player on the roster at this point, but Trevor Etienne, I thought played pretty well, kept it pretty vanilla, but I mean,
I like
for
what I
what Georgia
saw.
was doing, I agree. I think that he is DeAndre Swift and James Cook esque. Um, but the main running back that I'm interested in is Roderick Robinson. He's a 245-pound running back out of California, and dude is a thumper. He's an absolute thumper, which I expected to see. What I wasn't ready for was 3 catches for 33 yards out of the backfield or something like that. Apparently, and I didn't realize this, but apparently, this camp he's shown his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. Which is really impressive. A big reason why Andrew Paul is leaving the program now is because of how effective Roderick Robinson has been in both the running and the passing game. I can't say enough about him. And then lastly, the tight ends. We didn't see much out of Delp or Lucky. We saw Riddell make, I think, 1 catch, which was pretty impressive. They actually threw to the 3-star true freshman tight end at one point. I can't think of his name right now, but he's another one to look at. But we haven't seen Urasek. Urasek will not transfer in until the summer. So he's the Stanford transfer. For those who don't know, the guy can play. He can ball. So I'm anxious to see what that room looks like after he comes and steps onto campus and gets in there during fall practice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he'll be another addition that Georgia will be waiting on. And outside of that, pretty sound program. I think that they're definitely championship ready. Let's see if they go. I'm hearing whispers that they're still going to go get a wide receiver. Obviously, defensive tackle is a position that they'll always take, but I don't think that they need much, and Georgia knows that.
It would be hard to attract a wide receiver to that room as stacked as it is. It would have to be somebody that was just like I talked about, a top 30 pick for the NFL or something. Somebody that was ready to just make a full-on change, but not because they weren't playing or something. Because if you're not playing elsewhere, you're probably not going to play at Georgia right now.
Or it would be someone really young, which why would they? Georgia doesn't do that. They don't get young transfer players. They get guys with maybe 2 years of eligibility.
Right. Somebody that they can plug and play. And I don't think that necessarily describes a young guy, but I agree with a lot of what you said there. I think the inside linebacker group, we talked about it on the phone, that might be the best position group in all of football. Right there at the University of Georgia, that inside backer room and linebacker room in general, just overflowing with talent at linebacker. Very, very, very excited to see that group get kicked off this fall. I was pretty impressed with the corners. I thought they did a pretty good job. Especially considering you got a guy like Malachi Starks who sat out the spring. So obviously missing an All-American piece, probably the best player on your defense. Wasn't even playing, and I think overall I was very impressed with the defense. I think I think we've come to expect that a little bit as a Georgia fan. We expect the defense to step up and kind of rule the day. And this year I felt like everybody went in thinking the offense should definitely have the upper hand, and I thought the defense bowed up, and I think that's a really good sign because. My opinion hasn't changed on Georgia because of what I saw. I think I also believe that they're championship ready, but I think that this team might even be better than what we thought because of the way that the defense has came along and the way things have come together. I think that Georgia has a chance to be something special in 2024. Speaking of the defense,
one other
go
thing
ahead.
on this. So we've kind of talked about how a lot of teams like Ohio State, which we'll get into here in a minute, but a lot of teams played sort of soft football like in their spring game. They did not play physical like Georgia did, right? And in fact, very few teams played a full on tackle game, and Georgia wasn't like they're not trying to knock each other's heads off, but they were playing a physical football game, and so Kirby was asked about that, after the game, and And he said, pretty bluntly, that this is probably the best offense that this defense will face, and this is probably the best defense that this offense will face for the rest of the year. So why wouldn't we make it a real football game? And I think that that's kind of the difference in mentality. Also, there were guys in all over college football who sat out of their spring game for some injuries. Some of these guys were not actually hurt. They just didn't want to play, apparently. And Kirby said, my guys, we had to keep them off the field. The guys who were hurt, like Malachi Starks and Smile Munden, they wanted to get on the field and play. And then that's the difference in culture that we're trying to make sure people are aware of, in programs like Colorado, who we were talking about in our last segment, to a program like Georgia. There's a huge difference in culture there. And I just think that that's refreshing to hear in college football today.
Yeah, a good light to shine on college football. I mean, there's plenty of negative to go around these days. It seems like fans are fed up with people just kind of going wherever they want and really toying with fans' emotions. I mean, let's be real about it. We're all like emotionally attached to these teams, man. And whenever one of these guys that we've been watching from high school decides, I ain't playing enough, I'm out of here, it feels like a personal attack. It feels like a PA, bro. It feels like a personal attack on you. And that's why college football is so damn special, because everybody's so personally and emotionally invested in it. It's pretty wild.